Recording. Hello, everyone. Hello, Falcon fans. Hello, Bills fans. That's right, Bills fans. This evening, I have the Stud Brothers. That's right, the Stud Brothers, Alex and Ron, or Ron and Alex. They have a podcast called Between Two Studs, and they just happen to be lifelong Bills fans. And tonight, we're going to talk about the Bills, their history, how it aligns with the Falcons, and all sorts of fun stuff. But before we do anything, we are going to cue the music because that's what we do. That is what we do. And I'll be back, or we'll be back, in about a minute. All right. Welcome. Thank you. Welcome, gentlemen. So, hey, and I think I should let the crowd know you guys gave me my first opportunity to podcast, and we had a conversation a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And we're right back here, and I'm so glad to have you guys. So, Ron, Alex, tell the folks about yourself, tell them about your podcast. Tell them about your Bills fandom. Just tell them about yourselves. Doesn't matter who goes first. Go right ahead.
I'll go first. Why not? I'm the oldest, so
go for it. Go for it.
All right. So I'm Ron. We got Alex here. We're both originally from Western New York. We're just outside of Buffalo, small little city called Olean, and we as kind of already indicated. We've got our own little podcast called Between Two Studs. We really talk about a little bit about everything. And honestly, it was such a pleasure having you on as a guest. One of the things that we talked about, which I think we'll probably maybe talk a little bit about tonight, is doinks. And some interesting ideas about how the game could be changed there. So, but we're recording this. It's playoff season. Bills are still in it. We're very excited, and we're gonna get talking about that soon, but I'll pass it over to Alex.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, and you live in the Atlanta area.
Oh, right.
So you are in the sphere of influence of Atlanta Nation. Yeah. And so I am Ron's younger brother. We're separated by 8 years, believe it or not. And I'm the other half of our show, Between Two Studs. And yeah, as Ron said, grew up in Western New York, and we grew up. And we'll talk about this throughout the show, but if you've never been to Western New York, it's a cold, Rust Belt, tough climate, and we don't have a whole lot going for us. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I just mean a lot of the economic, industries have left. And so what you have is your fandom. Taylor Swift. Lady Gaga, they're not stopping on their tour in Buffalo. They're just not. So what we have is the Buffalo Bills, right? And so our identity of who we are is in many ways tied to a bunch of 25-year-old men who are not from Western New York in any capacity, but are there and they're representing us. And so I think that's really why that fandom is so personal to us. Even though Ron is now in the Atlanta area, I live right outside of Chicago, and it's like, even though we're not physically there, the fandom is probably even more important to us being away, because it's how we're represented, how where we grew up is represented on the national stage. Where else could Buffalo be competing with New York City or Los Angeles? Right? That's it. This is the thing we have. So, but it's a pleasure to be on the show, Terry. You know, you'd mentioned when you were on our podcast, and I love it. We're back. It's like coming full circle.
Yep.
And you know, as Ron said, our show, we kind of talk about different things every week depending on the guest. And we had such a blast when you were on our show because we got to focus on sports, and we don't always get to do that.
Right.
And so when you asked us to be on your show, I was like, let's do it, because I love talking about sports, and I definitely love talking about my fandom. So here we go.
Here we go. Hey, let's get into it. So I know you guys have been lifelong fans, right? Can you speak to what that entails as a Buffalo Bills fan specifically? Because I believe our fates, you know, as a Falcon fan and as a Buffalo Bills, they're kind of tethered together because of the success or lack of success from our teams at reaching the ultimate goal. So if you guys could kind of speak to what does that mean to be a lifelong Bills fan?
So I'll let Alex go first on this one, then I'll follow up with it.
Yeah, you know, it's cliche, but it's a way of life. As I said, you know, we don't have the entertainment options that a lot of the rest of the country has. So the Buffalo Bills are our representation. I mean, it's funny, Terry. Like, so you do the math and you say, okay, well, the NFL is about making money, right? They are a business. Right. And so you would say, well, if we're going to draw the lines, the 30 largest cities should have an NFL team, right? Because there's 2 teams in New York and 2 teams in LA. Right. So you'd say the 30 largest metros should have an NFL team, right? Buffalo is number 70, 72, right? So you're talking about a part of the country that's, if we were to you know, put the arrows and decide where we would create NFL franchises if we were to start from scratch, Buffalo would not be on the list, and neither would Green Bay.
Gotcha.
Right? And I think both of those are 2 of the most iconic franchises.
They are.
So I think we look at the Bills partially as it represents us, but also partially like we're just lucky we're just happy to have them.
Right.
Whether the Bills are bad, which they were for a long time, or whether they're good, it's like that's ours, right? You can't take that from us.
Right.
And I think that's where that fandom comes from, and we'll certainly talk about the mafia and people jumping through tables and all that. But it's like whether they're good or whether they're bad, that's who we have. That's what we have, and we're not going to let that go.
It's family, basically, is what you're saying.
It's family.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's something where I have a lot of memories growing up where we spent a lot of, you know, Sunday afternoons at our grandparents. And I remember watching a lot of Bills games with my grandparents, so much so that my grandfather, when he was buried, he actually was buried with a Bills blanket.
And, oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so, you know, he was very much a diehard Bills fan. There was just a lot of that identity that Alex spoke to. Like, I think my wife's not from Buffalo, but she originally, when we first went up to where I grew up, like there was a point where she was just like, man, there's Bills stuff everywhere. Isn't there anything else? And I'm like,
what?
Not really.
Not really. You have the Sabres, but there's no other major sports team there, right? And as Alex said, it's like there is a lot of identity just based on the fandom of the Bills. So,
I mean, it is funny because when you look at the logo, it has nothing to do with a bill. First of all, I don't even know what a bill is, right? It's named after Buffalo Bill Cody, but it's central to the city, right? And I think that's the interesting thing is you're not really a Bills fan. You're not really you're a fan of Buffalo, right? And I think that's the difference in many ways. The emblem is the city, so it's just a little bit different, right? That's what we have, and it's one of those things. You know, it's like you can pick on your sister, but no one else can pick on your sister. Nobody else can,
yeah.
Right? It's like that. I can make fun of my roots. I can make fun of Buffalo, but if anyone else does, you know, it's a problem, right? And
problem,
you know, this came up this week in the news. I don't know, Terry, if you saw this, but a journalist a couple of years ago from Baltimore referred to the city of Buffalo as a city of losers.
I saw that. I did
Yeah.
see that, and so let's get into that, right? Because
Yeah.
I think that you could argue that Atlanta has the same narrative, with the exception of the Braves here lately in 2021 and the Bulldogs. Atlanta has been mired in mediocrity and, let's face it, a lot of failure in certain circumstances when it comes to the postseason. Fair or not, that is the brand. That is the narrative that has been assigned to Atlanta, and it's not fair, right?
Mhm.
So my question for you, because I get this all the time, right? I'm a Falcons fan, I'm a Braves fan, I'm a Hawks fan, I'm everything ATL. And every now and then I will run up against a certain fan from a certain franchise that will go nameless, Patriots. And or Saints. They're both equally despised.
Sure.
They're both equally despised. Well, maybe the Saints a little bit more. No,
Although the funny thing is that the Saints' history was no better until Drew Brees. They were the eighth.
Exactly.
Right? So they look at their recent history and think they're so much better.
Right. Yeah. But but
and I have no beef. I have no beef with the Saints. I'm just saying.
I get it. No, you're right.
Impartially, why are they don't have much more room to stand on other than Drew Brees.
They got a ring though, and they ring check. But so often I get 28-3 slapped in my face, right? And it doesn't even bother anymore. It does not, right? My question to you is, with those 4 Super Bowls that you guys appeared to in the 90s, are you numb to it? Does it matter anymore? Like, do you look at that as, hey man, that happened, but this is now, or is there still a piece of your soul that fractures and crumbles onto itself when somebody brings it up? Like, give me your thoughts on that.
I'll go first.
Ron, you can go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, it's a challenge, right? Because you're right. Like, it stings. That all being the case, in my man cave down here, I have this thing that shows it's 4 mock Super Bowl tickets. Okay. And it does say Buffalo is the only team to have gone 4 consecutive years to the Super Bowl. And say what you want, that is an accomplishment.
That's a feat.
And it is.
That's a feat. That's quite a feat.
Yeah. And, I think to some degree for me, it's kind of like one of the good parts about the identity of Buffalo is that I've told a lot of friends, watch the 30 for 30 Four Falls of Buffalo. And it just really, it's a good documentary that I think characterizes the city of Buffalo, the players, who we are. And it also in some ways defines the fandom. I mean, one of the things that I think, really speaks to the Bills fandom is that, and it, even in the case of what happened with, specifically with that journalist, part of the story that happened back a few years ago is the Bills Mafia ended up donating to a cause to support, I believe it was Alzheimer's, because it was found, I think that his one of his relatives, right? But, in the case of, the first Super Bowl, Scott Norwood, he, missed that kick, right? And one of the things that really kind of, I think, showed the spirit of Buffalo is when they went back to the city. And, it's tough as losers of a Super Bowl. You come back to the city, how many people want to even go out and see that?
Right.
Tons of people were out there just to support them. They said, we want Scotty. And Scotty came out and people supported him, right? And not every fan base does that. And I think that defines character. It's like you don't really know the character of your fan base or your team, that area, until you go through tough times. And so in some ways it's painful, but in other ways it's it's a defining characteristic of that fandom.
Yeah, so I was really young I was born in 91. So, I remember I remember just the pieces, right? And of course the era of those incredible athletes, right? I remember, of course, a couple years later, how big of a deal it was when Jim Kelly retired. It was the end. It was the end of that saga, that legacy. I think whenever I see that Scott Norwood kick, every single time, I want it to go left. I want it to go left. I want it to frickin' go in.
Oh wow!
It does hurt me. It does. It hurts. And I wish, Terry, I could say like the 28-3. I wish I could say those comments don't bother me.
Mm-hmm.
But they get me to my core.
Oh, they
and
hurt.
I'm not proud to say that.
They hurt. I look at when they hurt.
They hurt a lot. When people say 13 seconds, which is, obviously when the Kansas City Chiefs came back and tied it up in the AFC divisional game with us a few years ago, I get that one. Ron and I both gotten, do you know what Bills stands for? Boy, I love losing Super Bowls.
Oh, wow.
Wide right. These are things that I've heard all over the country, but even internationally.
Mm-hmm.
I'll wear a Bills hat or whatever, and I've heard people in Europe or Asia make a Bills mocking joke. I think the point is, it's so personal to me because, again, it's the identification not of a sports team, not of a football club, but of that community.
Right.
And so when people make a joke about the community, I take it personally.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for me not to. And I admit sometimes I have to remind myself, like it's just a game.
Yeah.
It's just a game, but it's really hard for me. And just like I'm sure anyone listening who's a diehard sports fan, they understand. The thing about whenever I chat with somebody, Terry, that says, "Oh, sports, they're a giant waste of time, blah, 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 blah." A bunch of multimillionaires beating each other up. I always say this. I always say, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. But here's the deal. We live in a society where, for the most part, I'm not going to talk to my neighbor. You're not going to talk to the guy in the bus with you. There's really only two things that bring people together. Weather and sports.
Yeah.
Right? And so even if you think sports are a giant waste of time, it is what has commonality with millions of people, billions of people all over the world. I can talk to a random person on an airplane that I've never met before, and we can have a delightful 6-hour conversation on our flight to wherever, because we both have this commonality. And so that's my argument anytime someone ever criticizes sports as a waste of time.
Well, number one, I think if you've played sports, you can appreciate it more. That's number one. And then number two, sports unites people, right? Look, I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to do a show. I don't know when. It might be in the next couple of weeks, it might be in the next month. But I'm going to do a show on PTSD with sport franchises. And I know top of that list will be Falcons and Bills, because you're talking about, in the case of the Falcons, the most epic collapse in history. And guys, I'm not going to lie to you. I had to reevaluate my life, specifically from the perspective after that was, I can't give the Falcons this much of my soul, right? Because I was depressed. I went through a depression for about a year. I didn't watch Sports Center for about 4 or 5 months. I didn't watch NFL Network for 9 months. I did not. I couldn't watch it. I put it down. Even now, when I watch that Super Bowl, I watch the first half. I never watch the second half.
Yeah.
I watch the first half. It makes me happy. I know what happened, and I'm okay with it now, because look, even if the Falcons win the Super Bowl, the next day the mortgage man is going to want his money. Mr. Power Man is going to want his money. Mr. Gas Man, that's not going to change. I'm not getting any monetary gain, right? They're not compensating me for watching. So it is what it is. but I have had to reevaluate my fanhood. And not that I love them any less. I don't. But I just can't put them on that big old pedestal that they were on, because when I tell you it broke my heart, it broke my heart. It literally,
I have no doubt.
I was speechless. And that's a lot for me. Ron, you work with me. I never shut up. I was speechless. I probably didn't talk for like 2 days. Not that I was in a catatonic state, but my wife was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm just sitting there like, I don't know what the hell just happened. Right?
I can only imagine, Terry.
Yeah.
So during that Super Bowl, you can imagine this is the era where Tom Brady was kicking our ass twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
For how many years? 17 years. He's just kicking our ass twice a year, and I was just I hated the Patriots so much. I hated everything about Tom Brady. And I remember I was in New Orleans, of all cities. I was in New Orleans for that Super Bowl, and I remember being at a bar and watching it, and it was all Saints fans, right? And I was relishing it all. Oh my God! I had no affiliation. This was before Ron ever lived in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Right. I was just loving it. And then
the collapse.
We know what happened.
Oh
my heart went out to Atlanta. I mean, everyone teased me because I had been, booing,
right.
But they weren't my team, right? It's different, right? I was just like, oh shit, oops, But it's another thing when as much as the commentators that whole second half are going, well, this would be the biggest comeback, and and they go, and this will be the first overtime, right? They're thinking about the monumental in terms of checking boxes in terms of history. What they're not thinking about is the millions of people who are right now going,
I can't be watching this.
What do I do?
Right.
Yeah.
To that point, I still talk to Falcon fans once a week who are like, I haven't been able to watch them. So my next question to you is, do you have any Bills fans that are like, after those Super, and we're talking a long time, but do you know any Bills fans who just couldn't take it anymore and they stopped watching? Or is everybody pretty much, we're bought in, we're still in, we're waiting on the chip? Like, give me your thoughts on that.
I think it's fair to say, Ron, that some people from Western New York, although they will always identify as a Bills fan, I think there are some people who just said it's too painful. Yeah, I can't go through it one more time.
Right.
And I do think even our dad, is as much as a diehard Bills fan as he is, when things start, going off the rails, you can tell my dad goes, I've seen this one too many times. and there'll be times where I know he turns the TV off, because we'll text throughout the game, and I know he'll turn the TV off, and then all of a sudden the Bills get their act back together and he turns it back on, or he'll miss it. He'll go to bed if it was a primetime game or whatever, and then he'll wake up the next day and go, oh man, I wish I would have watched the whole thing. But I understand there is a level of PTSD. I mean, he was in his mid-30s, peak fandom, and saw it happen 4 freaking times in a row, year after year after year after year. And most of those Super Bowls were not even close. I mean, most of those Super Bowls, with the exception of the first one and the last one, the two in the middle, were bloodbaths. Yeah. And you have to watch your team that has been, 13-3.
Yeah.
Just get their butts kicked.
Yeah. That's tough, man. That's tough. But you know what? Go ahead, Ron. Go ahead.
I'll say I mean, I don't want to watch those games. How it's going to end. I'll even go as far as even some of the recent playoff games, 13 seconds, like Alex mentioned. There's so many people who are like, oh my gosh, that's the best football game ever played. I'm like, and I don't want to ever watch it again.
Right.
There was a period of a couple games where every year they were like the game of the year featured the Bills, but they were the team that lost.
Right.
And I'm like, it's not the game. If the Bills are the team that lost in the game of the year, I don't want to watch that game.
Yeah.
No.
No.
But all the same, like we've got like a number of Bills games that I think are on rotation that we'll watch. Like, it's a good one is a few years back when the Bills won against Dallas for Thanksgiving and Josh Allen eats that big old turkey leg. Like, that's just nice, right, in Dallas. And, of course, Jerry Jones got all upset and, I think he left early. Like, that's a good one to watch.
To me, it wasn't a close game at all.
No.
But it was the home playoff game against the Patriots where it was a beatdown. And the reason I think that game was the baton handoff.
Right.
To say this is no longer the Patriots division because at the time, sure, Tom Brady had moved on, but Belichick was still there. And at the time, you got to keep in mind, this is like the first year without Tom Brady. A lot of people still thought that the real genius was not in Tom Brady and that he would never have that same level of success, right? I think there was the question of who's the real genius? Is it Tom Brady or is it Belichick, right? And so when they came to Buffalo with Belichick, who'd been kicking our butts for whatever, and we beat them down. I remember going, that's 17 years of anger.
Yeah.
Just anger and frustration that is pouring out. And to me, that was the baton handoff, and the Bills have now won 5 consecutive AFC East division titles.
That was a home game too, right?
It was in Buffalo.
Yeah, I think it was a home game. Yeah, I think it was.
I would say the one other one is the comeback. That one is, it's classic.
Oh yeah, with Frank Reich.
Yeah,
Frank Reich. Yeah. No, that was phenomenal. I watched that game. I remember where I was when I watched that game. I think I watched that game in my parents' house, and it was phenomenal.
I don't know if you know this, Terry, but at the time, the Bill Stadium, which was at the time called Rich Stadium, was one of the largest stadiums in the NFL. 82,000 at that time. They've re-provisioned it. For luxury boxes and all that. But it was a massive stadium. Especially for Western New York, which, again, as we said at the beginning of the show, there's not that many people who live there in comparison to the rest of the country. So they got rid of this a few years ago. But back in the day, pretty much up until the 2015, if you didn't sell out your football game,
right,
it was a blackout.
Yeah.
So you couldn't watch the game locally. So it'd be covered nationally, right, in the game of a playoff game. But that comeback game was not televised in Western New York.
Are you serious? Wow.
What ended up happening was, you got to keep in mind, this is the 3rd Super Bowl run. That's the 3rd year. Okay. So they've already had 2 years where you hosted a wild card, you hosted a division, you hosted an AFC championship game. And I think there was 2 things that happened at the same time. One is, I think Bills fans were starting to get just like jaded. And the other thing was, people were going, well, I expect them to win this game. I expect them to win the next game.
Right.
And so that game was not televised. If you were in Western New York and anyone ever says, oh, I remember that game, I remember watching that game, I go, I know you're a liar.
Right.
Because you had to listen to that game if you were in Western New York. Right.
That's wow. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something.
And I remember that happened for, as diehard as the fans are in Western New York, during some of those years where they just were really bad in the late 90s, right after the Jim Kelly years, after all that, cold December game, it was a blackout. I remember being at our grandfather's house, and we'd all huddle in the living room and we'd listen to the game on the radio.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Now that is fandom right there. That's wow. Now we've experienced that with the Falcons, but and I would listen, but that's dedication right there, man. I got to give you respect. So let me ask you this: with everything that you've gone through, right? And we will get into this later in the show in a segment called "What If." But just for a second, what would a Super Bowl victory this year mean to you?
Do you want to start, Ron?
Yeah, I'll start. Geez, it's like one of those forbidden fruits and thoughts. Like you don't necessarily want to entertain it too much, just because you can almost get so
wrapped up,
so close, so wrapped up. But I think it would be such a cathartic release for all of Western New York. I mean, like you were saying with the Saints, like a Super Bowl ring means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's anything, it's like, yeah, that one year we were the winners. And
right.
Well,
and
no one can take that from
and
you.
nobody can take it away from you.
And so I feel like if it were to happen, I know Alex and I have talked about this a little bit on our show, but this is like one of those things where it's multi-generational with fandom and the family.
Yeah.
And so like one of the things that we've talked about is if it were to happen, we would want to go to our grandfather's where he's located in the cemetery and pour one out for him, because there's a lot of people in Western New York that say just one before I die, and it's genuine. And I think it's like one of those weird things too where like I don't even think most of the people of Buffalo, like there is a certain level of like, sure, we'd like to get greedy and be like, oh man, we got one, boy, two would be wonderful. Right. I think there's so many people, because it's been such a drought. One, we could go another 50 years and
Amen.
Probably be like, you know what? We got it one time.
Amen. Amen.
And I think that's what, I mean, it would just mean everything to the people of Western New York. And that's where it's like tough, because I feel for the players. You can tell when they do interviews, they want to get it just because they like the people of Western New York and they know
right.
how much it would mean.
Right. Alex?
So up until about a year ago, I lived about 2 miles north of Wrigley in the city of Chicago.
Okay.
And I was not in Chicago in 2016 when they broke the 108-year curse. Gotcha. I was not there. I've heard stories, was not present.
Right.
But I'll tell you, during that 2016 World Series, I had no affiliation with Chicago at the time. I was living in Boston. And I remember hearing the story of an old man, probably in his 70s or 80s, who listened to Game 7 in the dark in a graveyard next to where his father was buried. His father, who, had he been alive, would have been over 100.
Right.
Never got to hear the Cubs are the World Series champions. Right. And I'm envisioning this man in his 70s, grown man, sitting in a lawn chair in the dark. And how does that not give you goosebumps? How does that not make you emotional?
Yeah.
And I think that's as close as I can possibly convey the meaning of a Buffalo championship, because we have always been the butt of a joke. Mm-hmm. If it's not about the Super Bowls, it's a weather joke.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I think for that moment in time to say, we beat New York, we beat LA, we're better than anyone else.
Better than everybody. You're better than everybody.
For this timestamp, we can always look back during the rough times when we're dealing with natural disasters and blizzards. We have this, and I think people would stop. I would like to think people would stop making those jokes too. City of losers, because Buffalo and Western New York, they're not a city of losers.
No.
And I think that's That's what we need. It would be expelling decades of emotions,
Right.
and the victory would be something that would go on for quite some time.
Oh man,
Certainly
that
more
would
than
be
a
a hell
couple
of a party.
hours.
That would be a hell of a party.
Yeah, the day that it happens, I would say to anybody, you don't have to have Western New York ties. If you want to just join a big frickin' party.
Yep.
If you're within driving distance, I recommend coming. It's going to be nuts.
That's hey man, let me tell you something. I really that resonates with me, right? So both of my parents are deceased, and honestly, if we win a Super Bowl, I have my mom's ashes, my brother has my dad's. I'm gonna go to his house. I'm gonna have a drink with my mom, dad, and my brother.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be epic, man. I can't, because it's what I tell people is I've been in Atlanta all my life. I'm 54. I've been a Falcons fan since I was 6 years old, right? So I've been watching the Falcons, Braves, Hawks for 48 years. It's not about a championship with me. It's about a championship with my team that I've grown up with, that I've watched for 4 decades, that I've watched people just, oh man, the destitution that this franchise has endured. And just for one day, like you said, to know that there was nobody better. There was nobody better on that day, and nobody can take that away. I'm probably going to cry for about an hour. I'm literally, if that ever happens to my beloved Atlanta Falcons, I'm not going to want to be around anybody because I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
I'm the only thing that I can, and I'm doing a terrible job right now because I'm damn near getting emotional, but the only thing I can equate this to.
Let it flow.
Yeah. The only thing I can equate this to, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Rudy.
Yeah.
Where his dad walks into the stadium and his eyes tear up because he never thought he'd be there. And for damn sure didn't think he would see his son run out on the field. And this is a transference of belief. Mm-hmm. He is mystified, and you're just caught in the moment. And for me to see my beloved Atlanta Falcons win, I'm thinking about Matt Ryan, I'm thinking about Julio Jones, I'm thinking about William Andrews, I'm thinking about Deion Sanders, I'm thinking about Chris Chandler. There's a litany of folks that I'm going to say, oh my God, this is for you. I'm thinking about my dad. I'm thinking about my mom. It's almost it's not quite a religious experience, but it's spiritual. You get what I'm saying? It's transcendent, right? And I agree. If I can see one, we can suck for another 49 years. I don't care. I just want to see one.
I actually, if we're being completely honest, and I don't mean to completely change topics, but I actually wonder if the Bills were to win this year, what happens after that? I mean, and I'm being serious here, like the Buffalo Bills, just like the Atlanta Falcons, we've never won a Super Bowl. And I carry the torch. I know Ron carries the torch for our deceased family members that have never seen it happen.
Right.
And I like the game of football. I do. But the day that the Buffalo Bills win the Super Bowl, I'm going to party my ass off for a while. I will not be at work for a long period of time.
Oh, hell no.
And then I'm going to enjoy the spring, enjoy the summer. And then when football season starts again, I don't know. I'd love to chat with somebody who has been through this experience where they grew up, their teams never won.
Right.
It's not like if the Dolphins won next year, it's like, well, yeah, you still have the 72 Dolphins. You still won, right? You might not have been alive for it, but your franchise has won.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Would I still love? I mean, I'm sure I'd still love them, but would I be as passionate? I don't know. I don't know if I would be.
I think you'd be lighter because you wouldn't carry around that angst.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't carry around that vitriol for, I dare you to say some shit. I want you to, you wouldn't have that because
I wouldn't have the chip on my shoulder.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. you've won, right? So you're walking in the party like, oh, you can say whatever you want to say to me. I don't care, right?
That would be an interesting experience. I'll tell you right now. I don't know if you two feel this way. My wife thinks I'm crazy during the games. So during the games, and especially during playoff games, I can't eat anything. My stomach is in knots.
Yeah.
I can drink alcohol and drink water or whatever, but I cannot. And usually what happens is once the game ends, I'm starving.
Okay.
I'm because I haven't eaten anything, right?
Okay.
And I normally can't eat anything before the game either.
Okay.
And so in this scenario where the Bills finally hit the plateau, I would like to think maybe the next year I could actually eat some chicken wings during the game. That would be an exciting experience to have.
You probably could. You'd be amazed. Like, you probably could. Ron, how do you think it would be for you, right? So let's go there, right? This is a what if part of the show. Matter of fact, I did a what if Wednesday on the show today.
There we go.
But it is 2025. You know what I mean? It is January 2025. The Bills make the Super Bowl and they beat the Detroit Lions or whoever held
Sure.
NFC.
I want that matchup.
Which you guys did. You beat them 48-42 earlier this year. So you make it. You look it. You beat up on Baltimore this coming weekend. Then you go to Kansas City and you beat up on Mr. Pat Mahomes. You go to the Super Bowl and you tell Dan Campbell, not this year, buddy. And you win the Super Bowl. Talk to me about, like Alex said, what's your attitude? Well, first off, what are you going to do that first week? I know you're not going to be at work.
Yeah.
I know you're not going to be at work.
All right. So I'll let out a secret. Is that right if I let the secret out, Alex?
You can tell people the secret.
All right. So the past few years, Alex and I basically have gone in on an all-in or if the Bills go to the Super Bowl and win, bet. And the idea is if the Bills were to win, even if they lost, if they go to the Super Bowl, we don't want to be where the Super Bowl is.
Right.
We want to be in Buffalo. And so we've had these bets, and it's something where if that ever does happen, we're pretty much covered. So the thought is either we're going to be mourning or we're going to be celebrating, but we'll be up in Buffalo because, as the former coach said, where else would you rather be? Right here, right now.
Yeah, the hotels are booked. Like they are already booked. Like we booked them months ago.
Yep.
Wow.
The hotels are booked in Buffalo, and that's where we will be. And if the Bills win, we will be partying our asses off for the whole week. And if they lose, we'll probably be drinking and mourning.
Yeah.
For the whole week. So either way, that week would be not good for our kidneys.
Oh wow.
No.
Wow, yeah.
But
Can't
it's one of those sacrifices you'd be willing to make. But to your question about like if they did win, what it would mean, and as far as like next season, I mean, I think you're right. Like the playoffs would certainly take less importance, right? Like I feel like the way that the playoffs almost go is it's like back in elementary school when people are getting picked to join a team, and you're like, all right, there's just 2 or 3 of us left. Am I going to get picked? And you just kind of feel like that, where it's just like, you miss something, or just somebody has fluke luck or whatever, and then your hopes are dashed. I feel like there would be a lot less of the angst associated with that, because at the end of the day, sure, I think one of the things that Alex and I've talked about is what's nice about the Bills roster is we're not built for like a one season try.
Right.
This was supposed to be a rebuilding season.
Right.
So I would hope that we could do good and that we could make another go for it. But I will say it would certainly reduce some of the, like we won a Super Bowl last year, and what do you know, first round of the playoffs, we managed to bonk out. Yeah, it would still hurt, but they'd be like, well, we still got that ring from last year. So
Man, let me tell you something. I probably would be on autopilot that next season. Um, I really, I'm like, I cannot imagine a reality in which this happened, right? And maybe it's from my own mental health because those Falcons, they did it to me in 2016 in a way like I can't let myself think that and set myself up for that. But let's change gears a little bit. So you said that the hopes of the city are right now in the hands of 20-year-olds. One particular 20-year-old, Mr. Josh Allen, seems to be an enigmatic figure, a charismatic leader, and he does things on the football field that a lot of people can't do. Now, with that being said, do you think that he feels the pressure specifically set aside for Buffalo Bills? Do you think he really feels like I have to do this for this city because it's been through so much? Or is it pretty much, hey, man, I love the game and I play for Buffalo and whatever? Do you think he's fully vested?
Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, Terry, but I think he is fully vested in Western New York. I think, there was this the first couple of years of his career. He spent a lot of time with Thurman Thomas, with Jim Kelly, with Bruce Smith, with Marv Levy. There's actually a photo. All Bills fans will know it of Jim Kelly handing the ball, and there's a ball with an arrow on it, and it's like passing the torch from Jim Kelly. Because we had a whole bunch of scrubs in the interim. Right. No offense to Doug Flutie, he was an exception, but for the most part, a bunch of scrubs between Jim Kelly and now Josh Allen. And I think he understands the significance of what this would mean to the community, and he is an unbelievable competitor, and I think he thrives on. I think Josh Allen thrives on the pressure, and I think he would admit this if he was listening. He's a very emotional guy, and I think in the early part of his career, he didn't know how to manage his emotions. He wanted to win so badly that that's what people would say. Oh, well, he's a great athlete, but he's making too many interceptions. He's doing, where he hadn't refined his career yet. And I think when you look at it, it means so much to him. He's just such a competitor. He wants to win so badly. He would do reckless things. And the best example is the first playoff game that he was in. I want to say he was going against the Texans, but it may have been the Jags, where he runs and he tries to lateral the ball, and it ends up being a fumble. And people are going, "What the hell are you doing, man?"
Right.
And it was sloppy. It was sloppy. It was, but I could tell he just wants to win so bad.
Right.
And I think he represents Western New York extremely well, and I think people of Western New York will do everything they can to make sure he retires a Buffalo Bill.
Okay.
I think he definitely resonates with Western New York. Like his whole background on, when he graduated high school, he didn't have any college offers, right?
He had no. To be clear, he had no D1 offers.
D1, right? So he went to, was it Reedley, right?
Yeah, he went to community college.
Yep. So he went to a community college, and then there's a good, is it I forget, is it Gatorade commercial or is it Nike where it was like he applied 1,000. He sent videos to 1,000 different schools, and Wyoming came back, and again, people looked at him and they wrote him off. They said his accuracy is just not good enough. His accuracy, yeah, he's a great athlete, but his accuracy is horrendous. it's just too much of a liability. And I mean, part of the problem too is you look at like how many college athletes just don't translate well to the NFL, and certainly ones that have great accuracy even. And so I think to some degree, Josh Allen has just been kind of that. He resonates with Buffalo because Buffalo gets overlooked. He gets it. And, I think I did see something recently where he really does hope he can retire a Buffalo Bill, because he certainly, I think the city gets behind him, and, he gets the city. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think one of the best articles I read was explaining how they said, and I think as far as being a fan, one of the great parts, even if you're not a fan of the Bills, is just watching Josh Allen play. This sports commentator said it's like watching a hillbilly sling 101 turkey, wild turkey. You don't know what you're going to get, but it's like it's going to be an entertaining game. And how many games have you seen this year, even where it's like there's Josh going for a hurdle, there's Josh doing this or that. He's matured in such a way, and I love watching him play.
Yeah. So Terry, I don't know if you're going to bring this up, but the question that everyone asks Bills and Ravens fans right now is, who should be the MVP? Right? I don't know if you were going to ask that question, but it's a conversation that just keeps coming up. And my guess is both Josh and Lamar are done having the conversation. But I think it's. I'd be curious of your take, Terry, because you're the most impartial. But I'll tell you my opinion first.
Okay.
Last year, Josh's statistics were better than Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
If you look them side by side,
mm-hmm.
And the argument, and I think it was a valid argument, was they said Lamar meant more to his franchise than Josh did to the Bills.
Right.
The Bills had a great defense last year. They had Stephon Diggs last year.
Right.
They had already gone to a whole bunch of playoff games. The expectations were high. Therefore, Lamar meant more to his team. He should win. And I was fine with that.
Right.
So this year, we say Lamar's stats are better.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, yeah, just like how Josh Allen's stats were better the year before. I would say Josh Allen means more to the Bills this year because they didn't have a number one wide receiver.
Right.
They got Amari Cooper at the end of the trade deadline, but he hasn't even developed as a number one receiver yet. I'm hoping he continues to take off for the rest of the playoffs. This was supposed to be a rebuild year, right? We lost Stephon Diggs. Our defense was completely dismantled. We lost Jordan Poyer. We lost Micah Hyde. We lost Trey White. We lost a lot of really talented players, and we have like $75 million in dead cap. This was supposed to be the reset year. What made us get to this point in the season is Josh Allen. And so, again, my whole thing is if the definition is who had the best stats, then Josh should have won last year and Lamar should win this year. If the definition of MVP is who is most important to their franchise and that year's success, then Lamar rightly won last year and Josh Allen should rightly win this year. That's my opinion.
I agree 100%. First off, Lamar has Derrick Henry. If you don't know, that's a massive human being. Like that dude
He's 6'3", 245.
No, sir. I think he's like 6'10".
No.
Yes.
Really?
He's huge.
What?
He's huge. I'm not fighting him in the dark alley. I don't want any part.
No, I'm with you on that.
I don't want any part of that. Hey, bro, you got it. Take my bag. You got it. You got it. That's Mama. That dude should be named Mama. There goes that man again. Because I don't want to see him in the dark. I want no parts of that. If I'm a defensive back, hey, man, it's a business decision. I tried to grab by his ankles, and he kept going. Bro, that man is a walking shoulder impingement, a walking shoulder separation. Like, you try and hit him if you want to. That's a problem. That is a problem.
So I did.
I think my bones would break trying to tackle him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I did fact check us. So he's 6'3".
Oh,
He
he
is
is 6'3".
247.
I
But
said 6'3", 245. That's a pretty
I
good
thought
guess.
it was like 6'10"
yeah,
or whatever. I thought.
but all the same, he's a beast.
He's huge, man.
He's insane. Incredible respect for him. That's where I hate saying it, but well, maybe I don't hate saying it, but I was really pulling for the Steelers last week just because I don't want to see Derrick Henry in the playoffs.
I think most Bills fans were. I think most
Yeah.
Bills fans were thinking to themselves, the Steelers are a far inferior team. They're not as good. But with division rivals in the playoffs, you never know. They might squeak one out, and then they'd be easy to clean up in the playoffs. Meanwhile, this was my worst case scenario.
Yeah.
I would rather, and by the way, I know this is being recorded, so in a week from now, maybe I'm going to eat these words. But I said 3 weeks ago, when the seeds were just kind of starting to get figured out, I said I would rather play, meaning the Bills, I'd rather play in Arrowhead than play the Ravens at home in Buffalo. That's how scared I am of the Ravens, because the biggest weakness the Bills have is our run defense. This whole season, any team that commits to the run against the Bills beat us. The way that we've won is Josh Allen puts the team on his back, goes up by 2 or 3 touchdowns, and now forces the other team to abandon the run.
Right.
That's our secret sauce. Like if any defensive coordinator is listening right now, it's like just run the freaking ball, and if you can just keep scoring, which you will, you can win. Yeah. Right? The secret is we rely on our offense to run the score up and force the other opponent to abandon the run. If the Ravens abandon the run and are chucking the ball, I will feel good about us winning. If Derrick Henry rushes more than 25 times, we're losing the game.
Yeah.
That's my prediction.
Yeah. That dude's a problem, man. That dude is I would not want to hit him. I would not want to be a defensive back. Like I can't imagine that coming at me and it being a good ending, because I'm not trying to hit him. What I'm trying to do, I'm either trying to grab him from the side or I'm trying to go for those ankles. But I am not going to be mad if he runs by me. It is what it is.
I'm running to the sidelines if I'm facing that guy.
Yeah.
That
I mean, even to your point, if you grab him by the ankles, you need like 2 or 3 guys at least to stop him.
I'm gonna try and untie his shoelaces and maybe trips over him. You know what I mean? I mean that's all I got. I don't know, but yeah. So let's play word association, right? I'm gonna throw some names at you guys, and I just want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. All right. So we're gonna start with the one, the only, Mr. Jim Kelly.
Legend. Although I've been thinking about this recently, and I actually said to somebody, wait, should I only say one word, or can I continue? Can I give you my train of thought?
Go right ahead. Go ahead.
I actually had this conversation recently with someone. I said, Jim Kelly is the face of the Buffalo Bills, right?
Okay.
To be fair, O.J. Simpson was probably a better athlete, but we can't talk about him anymore, right? We pretend he didn't exist, right? When the NFL Network does their list of top running backs, O.J. Simpson is mysteriously not on the list, right? We just pretend he didn't exist, right? Even though he's the only running back ever to rush for 2,000 yards in 14 games. Everyone else did it in 16.
Yeah.
But you know, whatever. Jim Kelly is a legend. He is the face of the Buffalo Bills. But I've said, what happens if Josh Allen wins us even one? If he's 28 years old right now, Josh Allen. If he wins us the Super Bowl in 3 weeks from now, or whatever, 4 weeks from now, I think Jim Kelly is like yesterday's news. I think, and I mean that in like, I love Jim Kelly. He'll always be the face. Like he'll always be respected, right? He literally gave up his life and was like, I'm going to commit to living the rest of my life in Western New York. He's a treasure, but I think the gleam, this like aura that he exudes in Western New York, I think will transfer to Josh Allen. And he will no longer be regarded in the way that he was. That's my opinion.
I think you're right, though. I'll go with a different association. I don't know. It's like, to Alex's point, there was so much to just Jim Kelly in the 90s. He's a legend, right? But I think the other one I would think of is the K gun, right? Like, I know it's not named after him, but it's like the no huddle offense, the way that he just executed and went fast. You got to give him props. It was, you know, there was a reason why they were able to get to the Super Bowl 4 years, right? So that's what I'm going to go with him. Is kind of anticlimactic as it is. I'm thinking K gun.
Okay. All right. Next one, Bruce Smith.
Beast.
Absolute greatest defensive end of all time. And I go to my deathbed believing that he was better than Reggie White. Reggie White played his entire career in a 4-3 defense. Bruce Smith played his entire career in a 3-4 defense. He had less help up front and got more sacks. Best defensive end of all time. And if I was to, I mentioned earlier Jim Kelly's like the face of the Buffalo Bills. I would say the greatest Bill of all time, just pure talent, is Bruce Smith.
Yep.
But we just don't think of him because he's a defensive player, right? Everyone wants to think of your star, your legacy, your whatever is quarterback or running back or wide receiver traditionally. But Bruce Smith, greatest Buffalo Bill player athletically of all time.
Okay. Next one, and it's going to be interesting. Stephon Diggs.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, and be honest. Let it fly.
Immensely talented, massive ego.
Oh.
And I struggle.
Yeah.
I struggle, and Ron and I have talked about this before. I always said, Terry, so I played, middle school sports and backyard football and all that. And I'm a pretty big frame, right? And I used to be in better shape. I used to be in pretty decent shape, actually. And I'm 6'2". But what I'm saying is, I had the body that I could be an athlete. I never could have been a good athlete at a serious level, even though I have the body that people would say I'd love to have that physique to start out with, right, and then craft it and mold it. And it's because I'm not a competitor, right? I'm just not a competitor. Like, I love my sports, but I'm not a cutthroat kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Stephon Diggs, I think is a I'd probably say it to his face and then he'd punch me. I think he's an asshole, but he's an incredible talent,
right?
And he probably would not be as gifted on the field as he is if he wasn't an asshole, right? If he had been this really nice,
right there.
Had he been this really nice, humble guy, he probably would have never even made it to the NFL. He wasn't regarded as a top recruit. He was a 5th-round draft pick, right? I think what makes him so good is he is an asshole. I think that's what makes him so good. So as much as I hate him because because everything that happened with the Bills, I shouldn't say hate. As much as I'm disappointed with the way things turned out,
right.
I recognize that's all the good that we got out of him. It's a byproduct of having that ego,
right?
And you can't separate the two. It's like it's a package deal. You're going to get the incredible athlete. It's going to come with him being kind of a jerk.
So let's stay right there for a second, because this has long been debated about with wide receivers specifically, right?
Yeah,
the TOs of the world.
Yep.
The prima donnas, the
Ocho
ABs,
Cinco,
right? The ABs of the world. But then for every AB, there's a Marvin Harrison, who really didn't talk a lot, just scored the touchdown. There's a John Stallworth.
Sure.
There are soft-spoken receivers who just prove it on the field. But I guess my question is, do you think that asshole gene is innate to certain receivers? Like, in order to convince yourself to run a post pattern over the middle where you could get killed by a safety, do you have to be a bit of a narcissistic maniac to do that?
Yes.
I think
yes.
so.
I mean, I think you gave some great exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
But when I think about it in the last 20 years, I'm going to throw some names out. Plexico Burris, Keyshawn Johnson, Randy Moss. These guys had egos.
Right.
And I think you have to, when you're facing up against a cornerback or a safety, or in some cases you're getting double covered or triple covered.
Right.
You have to think you are the bee's knees. You have to think you are the shit.
Right.
And some of them are. And I got to say, I will, if they're playing for my team, I'll give them the biggest high five in the world, but I probably wouldn't want to be their friend in real life.
Probably.
Because they're probably a real piece of shit. But if they're playing for my team, I mean, I think that before this year, before the 2024 season, and someone said to me, who's the greatest pure athlete in the NFL right now? Just pure athlete. I would have said Tyreek Hill. I don't know if this year was a fluke. I don't know if this year is just because he's over the age of 30 now. But, man, what an incredible – I hate the guy. I mean, he plays for the Dolphins, right? He's my rival.
Yeah.
But objectively, unbelievable. But do I think he's like a really nice guy who I want to hang out with and get bagels and coffee with?
No. Heck no.
I'm not getting bagels and coffee with Tyreek Hill.
No.
Okay. So that brings another question to me. All right. So receivers are out. What position group do you think you'd be most comfortable having a beer with?
Kickers.
Offensive linemen.
Offensive
linemen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would go for kickers.
You're going
really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I feel like, I mean, they gotta have a certain they handle pressure. They just have a certain level of, you go in, sometimes the game completely falls on you. I don't know. I feel like they've definitely got some interesting stories, and there isn't as much of that asshole gene that you get there. like think about, when was the last time you thought, think of an asshole kicker, right? If you're that much of an asshole, they'll find another kicker anyway. Right?
Was it
some people would say Harrison Bucker.
Was it Vanderjagt for the Colts?
Right.
Didn't Peyton hate him or something like that?
Yeah, there's a story there.
Vanderjagt or whatever. He didn't like him or whatever.
Yeah. I get your point. I think for me, the reason I said offensive linemen is they are incredible athletes that don't get enough credit.
Right.
And they are generally somewhat, and I'm going to use this word delicately because they're still getting paid millions of dollars a year, but selfless in the sense that their job is to protect and make their running backs and their quarterbacks look good. Mm-hmm. When you're a really good offensive lineman, that's when nobody knows who you are. Right. The best offensive lineman, it's like you're doing your job. No one even knows who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think those are the kind of people, I bet you they're, and don't get me wrong, I wouldn't want to get in a fist fight. They'd probably kill me in one punch. But I bet you they're a lot of them are really good down to earth people.
You know what? I agree with that. So being that I do a lot of podcasting and I'm in that community, I met a lot of Falcons this year. And not that I didn't meet any assholes. Okay. But what I will say is Chris Lindstrom, who is our guard, stayed after practice and signed everybody's autograph. And it was a lot of autographs.
Yeah.
No other Falcon player did that. They signed some. Don't get me wrong. They come over, say, hey, and sign it. But it's like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, they're out. Chris probably stayed an hour, signed every autograph. So to your point, very unselfish. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's get to traditions. Let's get to the Bills Mafia, right? So, for the outside world who has no idea who the Bills Mafia are, but they want to know about breaking tables. They want to know about cold weather. They want to know about your traditions. tell us about Bills Mafia and the origin of breaking tables and just all of that.
So why don't I explain, and Ron, you clean up, right?
Works for me.
So I think the most important thing for people to understand first and foremost is a large percentage of the people who wind up in that stadium every weekend are not Americans. They're Canadian.
Really?
Right? I mean, yeah. It's something like 35 to 40% of the people who are Bills fans who generally go to games that are season ticket holders are Canadian.
I did not know that.
You got to keep in mind. So Buffalo is here, and Canada is right there. Right?
Okay.
It's you just cross a bridge. You just cross a bridge. Right? That's it.
Okay.
And obviously before 9/11, you didn't need a passport. Right? You didn't need anything. You just walked over. It was no big deal. So Canada obviously doesn't have a professional NFL team.
Mm-hmm.
The Bills was their adopted
franchise
team, right? If you're in Toronto, you can be in Buffalo in 90 minutes. Traffic subject, right? But 90 minutes with no traffic. And so the origin story was really simple. The Bills Stadium is built in the middle of nowhere called Orchard Park, south of the city, in what was originally just a big field. Actually, they're buried next to an Indian burial ground, and that's not a joke. That's for real. You can actually go visit the burial ground when you go to the Bills Stadium. Yeah, it's right next to it. Anyway, which some people get into the whole curse thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's in the middle of nowhere, and historically, a lot of the lots that are private. They're not actually owned by the Buffalo Bills. They're not owned by the NFL. It's literally some dude who bought up a couple acres of land, or it could be someone's backyard. And they'll say, "Pay me $20, you can park in my backyard." Okay. Well, so the NFL has strict rules because they're liable if something bad happens in their lots.
Right.
So, like, don't quote me on this, but it's something like the lots aren't supposed to open until 5 hours before. The official lots aren't supposed to open until 5 hours before game, for example, to limit the amount of drinking and tailgating.
Right.
Well, okay, so you have a lot of Canadians who are saying to themselves, I got nothing going on Friday. Why don't I come down in my RV on a Thursday night, park in a private lot? I'll pay some dude $20. Can I hang out and park in your backyard? And I'm going to start cracking open a Molson on Thursday.
Dang. And the game is Sunday.
The game's on Sunday. They're drinking Thursday. And you will. If you go to Buffalo, if you go to Orchard Park, we're recording this, and it's Thursday night. There's probably, now it is the dead of winter. So it's the dead of winter, but there's probably some RVs set up, and there's people drinking right now. Dang. And so let me tell you something. When you start drinking on a Thursday, by the time it gets to Sunday morning, you start thinking some crazy thoughts, including the idea of setting a table on fire and jumping through it is a good idea.
Wow.
Right? And here's the thing. This stuff had been going on forever. I mean, the stadium that the Bills were in Orchard Park, New York, was built in 1973. That stuff's been going on, this crazy mayhem. And, all the things you see on TikTok and on Instagram, this stuff's been going on the whole time. It's just social media introduced it to the whole world.
Okay.
It's always been going on, right? And so there's all sorts of crazy traditions. There's this guy that Ron and I both met a couple times. His name's Pinto Ron.
Yep.
And he's got an old Pinto, literally an old Pinto car, that he has turned into an oven. Like he cooks food on top of the Pinto.
Wow. And
he's turned it into grills and he cooks all this food up for everybody, right? He gives it away for free. You may have seen clips on during like breaks between NFL games. There's this whole tradition that he started where the thumb hole in a bowling ball, he fills it with booze, and then you drink out of the bowling ball. And then you throw the ball down, and then you blow out of a vuvuzela. These were all just crazy ideas, people sitting around drinking for 48, 72 hours. and it created a life of its own, especially after years where the Bills were really bad.
Right.
It's bad, it's cold, but they're your team, and no one's taking them from you.
Okay.
And so I love that the world is now seeing it, although there is a little bit of me. For every 5 videos I see that someone shares with me, four of them I laugh and I go, yeah, go Bills. And then 1 in 5 I go, oh man, I don't want everyone to think we're just a bunch of hillbillies.
Right.
There is that balance, right? But that truthfully it's a unique experience that I think Green Bay and Buffalo are the only ones that have this true. You're parking in some stranger's yard, you're using their bathroom, you're paying them $20, and the NFL can't regulate it. There's literally nothing they can do because it's private property. And so that's why crazy stuff can happen. The NFL can't regulate it.
Mm.
So that's where the crazy fandom came from.
I like to think there's a few things to it too. It's like, as Alex mentioned, you get some of those dynamics going on where I think so much of it just has to do with the fact that, like, you did have so many bad years. Maybe we can't elevate the game, but we can elevate our tailgating. I also feel it's like, I mean, you have to give credit to a lot of the fans too. I mean, I get it. Every team has their own fans that really kind of do their thing, but there's definitely some really interesting things that go on in specifically. We'll call it Hammer's Lot because that place is fantastic. But like, what's really interesting,
that's one of the private lots. Just for everyone listening, Hammer's Lot is one of the private lots, but there's a whole bunch of them.
But one of the things I really love too is how, like, every once in a while I'll see posts about people who they're not Bills fans. They're visiting Orchard Park. They're there to see they're there to see their team, of course, but they go out to kind of figure out, like, well, what's the tailgating situation like with the Bills fans? And Bills fans are really incredibly welcoming. People have a good time. You don't have to be a Bills fan to have a great time out there, and that's something that I think is awesome about the community as well. Is you can go out there and just have a great time, and people aren't going to say, oh, you're not welcome or whatever. It's very, very welcoming, and I think that's a pretty awesome part of it too.
As long as you're not a division rival, we should be clear about that.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
As long, but
fans won't have as much of a good time, but okay.
You as a Falcons fan, if you were to show up fully in your Atlanta gear,
right,
and if you're humble, like you're not just talking trash, if you're just like, hey, Bills fans, I flew up from Atlanta, I just want to have a good time, they're going to embrace you. They're going to embrace you and say, hey, you want to come over and take a shot out of a bowling ball with us?
Or have some pizza made on a filing cabinet? Do
you want to jump through a table? Do you want to chug some beer together? I mean, seriously, like, it is in some ways, it's like, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you for traveling to be here in Western New York, because we know it's cold. We know we don't have all the sexy nightclubs and bars, and we don't have those amenities that a lot of other cities have. We have the Bills, and if you're here, welcome.
Okay. All right. Speaking of amenities, you guys are about to break ground on a new stadium pretty soon. Talk to me about the impact of the stadium. First off, on the game and the experience from the players, and then talk to me about the impact on Buffalo itself, on the economy. Like, what is this new stadium going to mean to Buffalo as a community and Buffalo as a team, to the experience of other teams coming there and the experience for the fans?
I'll try to take a stab at this first, and then Alex will clean up. So I think one of the big things that is a little bit tough is there's a certain level of just like the economics of any stadium. It's a big thing, right? It's a big project that's very costly. And I do feel like the NFL certainly wants to ensure that as part of the experience that any fan has, you have modern amenities. And one of the problems with Rich Stadium, or now Highmark Stadium, is that it's an old stadium, right? It's a very big stadium, but it's very old. And one of the challenges that the owners looked at it and basically tried to figure out, is it worth putting in all of the additional, to repair it, or is it to retrofit it, or is it worth just getting a new stadium? And so the new stadium designs, I really like it. You're always going to have some people who are a bit divided. I think one of the good or bad parts is that there's a lot of technology advancements with the new stadium that I think would be particularly enjoyable for the fans. One of the things that a lot of people, I got into a discussion with somebody the other day about it, was they were like, so you're getting a new stadium? I'm like, yeah. So why isn't it domed? And a big part of that is just it's Western New York. You get the lake effect snow. There is a certain level of that's part of the Buffalo Bills experience.
Mm-hmm.
But all the same, with the new stadium that's going in, there's a lot of interesting things about, for instance, the aerodynamics with the wind. For the fans that are sitting, there's actually going to be like those heater areas so that over the stadium, so it'll help with when you're sitting, it's not going to be quite as bad as it is right now. Even with the field, there's heaters in the field. So you're going to still have that Buffalo experience. So I think it's always a little bit of a divisive topic, right? But I feel like it will be something that I think Buffalo fans will be proud of. And I think that it certainly is going to elevate like the offerings. Like one thing I wasn't aware that Alex let me know about is, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, is that so the current stadium itself doesn't have like a ton of kitchen amenities, right? So a lot of
it was built in the 70s when the only thing people ate were hot dogs and beer.
Right.
So, I mean, what people expect in a stadium today are very different than what people expected 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So like in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, like how much awesomeness there is there, you're getting food that's usually, I mean, they do their best to really, like they'll get it and they do some pretty cool things. Like one of the cool things that they do is like with the fries and that, right? Like the big thing of fries that, you know what I'm talking about, Alex?
Yeah, I do.
So it's like they do have a lot of those things, but it's not quite the same that you would get, like, for instance, in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, for instance.
I think the old stadium was just built during a very different era where it was built during an era where the fans were going to come to watch the game, right? It wasn't about, I'm going to post about this on social media.
Right.
It wasn't about, it's about the experience now that people want to have, and all of the Instagram photos and the right angles. And so it was built during a very different time period. As Ron said, there's actually a canopy in the new stadium that can melt up to 7 feet of snow. So it's actually really cool because it's going to be able to melt snow, which I don't know, anyone who's a big sports fan knows that one of the issues right now is anytime the Bills have to play a game right after snow, they have to hire people to clear the seats. So the canopy is going to cover 60% of the seats. And there's going to be a heating system. This is my favorite part. There's a heating system that's going to be under the grass of the playing field. So they'll be able to go back to playing on natural grass. The Bills haven't played on natural grass in a long time, and I think that's just a much better experience. The outdoor thing, because a lot of people bring it up, and I always say to people, with all due respect, you clearly don't know Western New York. They go, what do you mean? I go, the only reason you have a dome, forget about the weather, right? Move the weather aside for a second. The only reason you have a dome is if you're going to have national acts throughout the year that would entice and require a dome, right? Yeah, Taylor Swift's coming to town, Elton John's coming to town, whoever's coming to town, and they want to play in a place that they can play whether it's raining or not raining. Okay, none of those talents are ever coming to Buffalo. Buffalo is not growing We're actually lucky to just keep our population consistent right now. And I'm not saying this in a doom and gloom kind of way.
Right.
What I'm saying is reality.
Right.
And the reality is, why are you going to spend another $1 billion to put a dome over it when it's not going to be used? If we were hosting massive conferences, if we were hosting Mobile World Congress or Cisco Live, sure, make it domed. But
Right.
we're never hosting those kind of events. It would be a waste of money beyond everything else. I think this new stadium, more than anything else, secures the future. It's an ironclad contract for the next 30 years that says you're not leaving Buffalo, New York. And that has always been a fear for as long as Ron and I have been alive, that are the Bills going to leave Buffalo? St. Louis is bigger than Buffalo. They lost their team. Cleveland is bigger than Buffalo. They lost their team and got another one back. San Diego is bigger than Buffalo. They lost their team. Oakland is bigger than Buffalo. They lost their team.
Yeah.
You know why people know the name Buffalo? It's because of the Bills. Toledo, Ohio is bigger than Buffalo by terms of population. The reason people know the name Buffalo is because we have a national football team and there's only 32 in the nation.
That's a good point.
That is how important it is.
That is a good point.
And so, the other thing is people go into the financials and go, well, the Miami Dolphins stadium was privately funded. Well, of course it was privately funded. They can have events all year round.
Right.
So it makes sense to have private investment.
Right.
Right. But an economy like Buffalo, you're going to always need public funds for that, because it's just, you're not going to bring in the other entertainment options to offset those costs.
Yeah.
So you can say, oh, this is a waste of taxpayer dollars, but my response has always been, that's our identity. Well, how do you put a price tag on your identity? The Buffalo Bills are Western New Yorkers' identity. I can't put a price tag on that. I don't know what that's worth, but I will say this: if the Buffalo Bills ever left Buffalo, culturally, from a morale standpoint, Western New York would be destroyed, and I'm not sure it would ever recover.
Okay. That's wow. That's one and the same. It's almost like the Bills are the symbiotic suit for the Buffalo area, if you'll forgive the Spider-Man reference. But let's shift gears.
I like the Spider-Man reference.
Let's shift gears a minute. Something happened a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, in Buffalo that shook the culture, that shocked the world, that I certainly remember what I was doing when it happened. The worst injury that I can remember in my lifetime was Darryl Stingley, who was paralyzed after a hit on the field. Now, I don't even know that I was 2 years old when that happened. I don't remember, but I know I was very young. But
do you remember Kevin Everett?
I do not.
Kevin Everett, Buffalo Bill tight end, who kick return. This was in early 2000s, and he was paralyzed. But he can now. His career's over, but he can walk.
Okay,
he can walk. Good. But
that's good.
Real horrible injury, Kevin Everett.
Okay, I will.
But I know you're getting to Damar Hamlin.
Yeah. It's a Monday night game. I've got my TV behind me. You can't see it, but I'm watching the game, and I remember he goes down, and all hell breaks loose, and you start to see grown football players literally in tears. And for about 10 minutes, I'm thinking, holy shit, what happened? Like, is it that bad?
Are we going to see a man die on the field?
Right.
Yeah.
And then you start to see them trying to revive him. And now I start to get upset because I'm like, this isn't supposed to happen. This is the NFL. What the hell is going on? What is going on? I can only imagine that if that were my team, my feelings might be magnified by like 1,000. So as Buffalo Bills fans, talk to me about what you guys were thinking in that moment.
So to give the full context of that game, it was like a Week 17 game, Week 16, Week 17 against the Bengals. And that year, we were fighting for the number 2 seed with them. This game had high stakes, prime time Monday night game. It was right after New Year's, and I was with my wife in Cancun.
Oh, wow.
And I had to find a place that was going to play the game with audio. My options were somewhat limited, but I found a place that you may have heard of. It's called Hooters.
Ah!
Never heard of them.
So my wife and I, we are at the lovely Hooters.
Oh, wow.
In Cancun. And I had finished my wings because, again, I can't eat during the game. So I had to eat that before the game.
Right.
All right. And I'm like, this is going to be an awesome game. This is going to be awesome. Now, to give everyone full context, Damar Hamlin should not have been in that game. He was brought in because of injuries, right? The starting cornerback or the starting safeties for the Bills are Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, but there were injuries, so he was brought in, and it must have been within the first what? You guys remember? Must have been first 5 minutes of the game.
I think
4 or 5 minutes,
maybe.
It was pretty early on. It was pretty early on, and I'm in this bar where no one else is really watching it. I mean, they're kind of watching, but not really. And I turn to my wife and I don't like. She's like, what happens here? Does the game go on? What do you do?
Right.
I'm thinking about the players. I'm thinking about this is your brother, right? This is whether he's a starter or not, he is somebody who you lived and breathed with, lived and bled with for the last X number of months, and now you have no idea what's going to happen to this guy.
Right.
I mean, legally, he was dead on the field.
Yeah,
he didn't have a heartbeat.
That's crazy.
And your brain just goes in so many directions, and I'm really glad the NFL called the game. That was the right decision. Yeah. How would you expect anyone to play after that?
Yeah.
I have my feelings about Damar Hamlin since, but I think, Ron, why don't you give your initial thoughts, and then we can go to that topic.
Yeah. So I would say that, I was at home watching the game in the U.S., but I just remember that watching that game, I mean, as Alex mentioned, there was a lot going into that game, so you're pumped, you're excited. It's a Monday night game. And, let's be honest, how many Monday night football games do you watch where you're like, man, this is not interesting at all? Why am I even going to watch it?
Right.
This had so much riding on it. And so it was an exciting game to want to watch. And, I just remember, watching as, the announcers were kind of just, clearly something's happened, and as they were cutting to the field, and then you had the players praying over him, and watching them trying to resuscitate him. And I don't know, I think in previous eras maybe they might have just said, well, let's just pull him off the field and just leave it at that. I'm glad they called the game, and in some ways I'm kind of glad that they ended up that I'm glad that they televised things. I don't know as a player how you could have gone on after seeing your player, because I mean, I think on some level you could argue, okay, they're going to have a revenge game, but this was an accident. Nobody would have wanted that to happen.
No,
it doesn't matter how much of a rivalry you have. You don't want a player to go off the field like that.
Yeah.
No, and I think what you just said was important. Was there was no. For anyone who hasn't seen that hit, it was a freak accident. There was nothing flagrant. There was nothing improper, right? There was no anger by Bills fans that the Bengals did something wrong, right? It was just a freak thing, and so I think you had to. I think it showed respect to the game and respect to the players. When you called it, that was necessary.
It was necessary, but for a plethora of reasons. Football is not a game you can play half-hearted.
No.
So you go out there and you got an ounce of that, you're going to get hurt. If you're out there thinking about getting hurt, you're going to get hurt. That football is the one game you got to go balls to the wall. There can't be any ambiguity. There can't be any doubt. You got to go for it, because if you don't, you're going to get yourself hurt and probably somebody else. So from that perspective, since nobody's head was going to be in that, because how could it be, right? I'm glad they did call the game. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Damar Hamlin now, Alex, because you alluded to something.
Well, so I'll tell you what. I've been very impressed this year.
Okay.
Let me give you the full story.
Okay.
So Damar Hamlin was, as I said, was in that game because of an injury.
Right.
And was not, and this is, I feel like you almost can't say this publicly, but I'm clearly about to say it on a podcast. He wasn't that great of a player.
Okay.
Right? Like, he was in that game because of an injury, and I'm not sure if he was going to be on the Bills roster the following year if it wasn't for the fact that what happened.
Yeah.
And so this was the tricky thing, right? Because he had this miraculous, Cincinnati medical staff, unbelievable. Kudos to them. He went to the White House, met the president, and everyone, even people who had no idea about football, didn't know anything about the Bills. You would have said to them, name one Buffalo Bill athlete. They wouldn't know Josh Allen at the time, but they knew Damar Hamlin, right? I mean, he was huge.
Right.
And then the season started, and people were texting me, these same people who didn't watch the game, and I'm not criticizing them, I'm just giving you the context.
Right.
And they're like, why is Damar Hamlin not in the game? I thought he was I thought he recovered. And I didn't know, it was tough for me.
Right.
How do you tell somebody, like, the most famous player on the Buffalo Bills, and he had his incredible story, and I'm not taking anything away from the guy.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, he has this whole CPR certifications that he paid for with all the money, and how many lives have been saved because people were certified. I mean, unbelievable guy, right? Like, I love the guy.
Yeah.
But how do you tell people, well, the reason he's not on the field has nothing to do with the injury. It's because he's not that talented.
Right.
The most famous player on the Buffalo Bills that year was not a very good player and might not have even made the roster if it wasn't for the fact that the PR would be, you cut the guy who died on the field.
Right.
You know? And so I actually felt last year, I remember saying to myself, I almost feel it's a little unfair. The Bills have to keep this guy as part of their 53-man roster because optically you have to.
Right.
But I'm not sure he would be on the roster otherwise, and yet he's filling up one of our 53 slots. I was like, I feel like the NFL should give us an extra slot. We should get 54 slots. I mean, I wasn't serious about that, but I was thinking about that, right? That's what I said last year.
Yeah, this year he's been explosive. Like,
this year, well, I'm not going to say explosive, Ron, but he's been good.
Yeah.
He now it helps that it does help that I think he's got an incredible character and work ethic, in part because of what happened.
Yep.
And it also helps that the Bills head coach, Sean McDermott, is a secondary whisperer. I mean, like, his expertise, I think he's one of the best secondary coaches in the league, right? Like, regardless of, like, his expertise has always been secondary. Now, I think it's hard to fill Hyde and Poyer.
Yeah.
Right. I think he was set up like, how are you going to replace those two guys? Right. And he hasn't been as good as either one of those guys.
Right.
But he has been a serviceable safety who every time he makes a big hit, everyone in the stadium erupts.
Right.
Right. He has become the mascot. And I think he's gotten past being a liability. I think there was a period of time when he was on the field, it was a liability. I don't think he's a liability anymore. Do I feel as good about him as I did about Poyer 5 years ago? No. But He's the cheerleader. He's the mascot. He's the whatever you want to call him. He does his job. And I think as Bills Mafia, we are so happy for him.
Okay.
But
yeah,
the reality is it's more complex, right? He wasn't just this like all-star, amazing first-round draft pick. You know, the story is more complicated than that. He's had to kind of get to that point.
but I think to your point about him being a cheerleader, like is completely true. Like one of the big things that he has said, and I love it in his interviews, is he's like, I got to know love from everybody, so many people in this country, so many people of the world who are praying for me for this recovery. And to know that feeling is not something that most people will ever know. And so one of the big things that he's always been trying to do is he wants to kind of spread that love a little bit. He wants people to feel that. And so that's where, as Alex mentioned, like the CPR, clinics that he sponsors as part of his kind of fundraising thing is really, really awesome, right? Like you think about how many people that.
I don't know about you. I know people who personally have told me they got CPR certified because of him.
Right.
And how incredible is that?
Yeah. And it's just like that kind of embodiment of, okay, hey, he took that. And I always thought that was cool with like what he would do with like the 3 where he's like, make it like a heart, right? And just, I mean, I get sometimes that players don't always, wear their emotions on their sleeves like that. But I feel like DeMar Hamlin certainly brings people together, and I feel like he elevates the team.
He's the mascot of the team, and I mean that in the best possible way.
Yep.
Like I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I'm not sure he'll ever be a Pro Bowl player. I'm not sure he's ever going to be an all-pro athlete.
Right.
But he symbolizes perseverance. He symbolizes what, for people who are Bills fans, what being a Bills player is all about.
Right.
And so therefore, it's an unbelievable story. So we're, obviously so happy for his recovery, and wouldn't it be great, right? The NFL lords, the gods who are predicting the future of the NFL. Wouldn't it be great for him to have a Super Bowl ring? I mean, doesn't that just seem destiny?
Or what if he got the interception to seal the Super Bowl? Like that would just
wouldn't that be unbelievable?
That'd be phenomenal. You know what? I can understand that. So my mother passed in May 16th, 2024. And I was her caregiver. I was my dad's caregiver. My dad passed in April 13th, 2020. Those are dates you just remember. But when my dad died, I was upset. But nothing can prepare you for losing your mother. I don't care what anybody says. It's nothing can prepare you for it. And so when I lost my mom, I put all my focus in the podcast just because I didn't want to sit down, and it was nothing I could do about it. You know what I mean? I couldn't fix it. I couldn't change it. And I put it into podcasting, but I would post a lot about my mother, and people were just so nice with their responses. Like I would post something, hey, Mom, thinking about you today, blah, 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 blah. And I'd get 100 responses of people just, hey, praying for you. And it really makes a difference. You think it doesn't until you go through something like that. You think you don't need anybody until you go through something like that. And I'm here to tell you, it makes a difference. Mm-hmm. So much so that, guess what? Whenever there are two of my Facebook friends right now that are going through cancer. One of them is named Mimi. The other is named Leanne. And I encourage them every day. Every day without fail, I get up there and I say, hey, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. But you'd be surprised at how just somebody telling you, hey, I'm praying for you, it's going to be okay. You add that up 100, 200. Yeah, it'll give you energy. So I agree with that. Now, I've never experienced that on his level. But I can see the logic in it. So it makes sense. Let's shift gears again. Buffalo Bills have I'd say a worldwide following, or yeah, I'd say a worldwide following.
Yep,
You guys
I know
have,
of at least one Japanese guy who's
yeah,
Bill Samurai. He's awesome.
yeah. You guys have 4 bars here, right?
Yep.
Talk to me about the culture, or in this case, the subculture of Bills Mafia or Bills fandom in the ATL and Bills fandom in Chicago, and what that's like.
Okay, so I'll have to kind of start with a few things here. So Alex doesn't live in Atlanta currently, but he has been to 2 Atlanta Bills backers bars. The other thing I have to give Alex a lot of credit on, I didn't even know about Bills backers bars until Alex told me about them. You know, wherever he's lived, he's gone out, found them. He's found the communities that are out there. So in Atlanta, there's 4 Bills backers bars, as you mentioned. There's some discussion about possibly more. So I'll list them. So the first is the Tavern at Medlock. I know Alex has been there. There's the Anchor Bar, which that's just south of Woodstock, right? I think it's in Kennesaw. There's the Whitehall Tavern, and then there's the Standard at Roswell. And so I know Alex has been to the other one you've been to is the Anchor Bar. So he's been to both of those. The What's interesting, I think, about the Atlanta areas, and Alex already kind of talked about it earlier, is that one of the problems with Western New York is that there's been so many jobs that have been lost over the years, and so a lot of people have had to move outside of Western New York. And Atlanta is like one of those really nice places because I mean the weather here is fantastic. Outside of the summer, it gets a little bit hot, but
Yeah,
if you can tolerate that, the winters are very mild. But I think that there are a lot of things where it's for an East Coast city, it's not super expensive like some places are on the East Coast, and so there are a lot of people that are from Western New York that have come to this area. So I think the big things that I've really enjoyed is that there is a huge Bills backers presence in Atlanta. Um, they do a lot with a lot of the Bills backers bars where, um, like for instance, what they'll do is they'll make up some regional food delicacies. Like one of them is the beef on weck. You'll of course do good wings, but there's pizza. There's a lot of different things. There's like Salem's hot dogs. There's a lot of things that are a little bit nuanced from Western New York, but you can still get here. And so I think food is another part of that culture that, it's like anything, there's always some level of identity. But one thing that I've always enjoyed too is hearing about whenever Bills fans travel, um, the beer that we all drink is Labatt Blue. And I'll let Alex explain that because that's an interesting story in and of its own right. You want to fill it in?
Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, to Ron's point, I think the fandom continues even when you leave Western New York, and because so many people have left Western New York, every city you have your kindred spirit, your brothers, right, and sisters, who you carry that torch, and it is so much fun because I've been to Bills backer bars all over this country, and it's amazing how often I've run into people and they know our little hometown. In fact, I've met people who knew you, Ron.
Yeah.
Oh, Ron Stud. Yeah. And I'm in Austin, Texas, right? I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, right? And I'm in Houston. I'm in Milwaukee, right? It is so much fun, and it's, again, we talked about it earlier. It's like we're strangers, but we have this commonality. We have this thing that ties us together, that makes it special for us, and the food and the beverage are the nostalgia that transports us temporarily back into Western New York, even if it is 75 degrees out in the middle of winter, right? Which would never happen in Western New York. But the beer thing is interesting because I mentioned earlier how Canada's just a hop, skip, and a jump right from Western New York. Growing up, Ron and I felt like we saw Canadian coins as much as we saw American coins, right? It was just what you see. So one of the big things about Western New York is we like to drink, Terry. And what's the drinking age in Canada? 18. So what do you do when you turn 18? Are you gonna twiddle your thumbs and say, well, I got to wait till I'm 21 to drink, or do you hop over the border?
Absolutely.
Go over to Canada, pick up some Labatt's or Molson, and bring it back. And guess what? It's the best marketing on earth, because you drink that for 3 years, and now you turn 21, and you say, well, what do you want to be drinking now that you're legal in the United States? And you go, well, I've already been drinking Labatt's for the last 3 years. I'm going to keep drinking that, right? And so it became sort of universally the beer of Western New York because of illegally drinking alcohol underage. It's basically what it is. So that's the story there. But it's true. I mean, you go anywhere, any Bill's bar, you're gonna find Labatt's. And in fact, so there was a bar that the biggest, wildest, possibly best Buffalo Bills backer bar I've ever been to in my life. It's across from the TD Garden in Boston. I mean, the TD Garden, right? Like massive, the iconic Larry Bird, right? The story, and the biggest bar across the street is a Buffalo Bills backer bar.
That's irony,
right? It is irony. So it's 3 stories. There's a massive basement, massive first floor, and a massive second floor.
Right.
And because you're only 6 hours away from Buffalo, and because you can get everything in bulk, I mean, they would have week 3 is Mighty Taco week. We're getting things directly imported from Mighty Taco, right from their facility. Right. Week, which by the way, that's like the Taco Bell of Western New York, right?
Yep.
Week 4, we're bringing in Charlie the Butcher, and we're doing the beef on Wicks fresh. I mean, like they took it to the next level. I'm not disparaging Atlanta. I'm just saying they took it to the whole next level. And so the amount of beer, Labatt's beer, that was drank during games was astounding. Astounding. I mean, you're talking 400 Bills fans in this bar, right? I mean, by the way, there's probably 6 or 7 different bars, right, inside the bar, right, actual bars. And I remember I used to go there every week when I was 23, 24. The Bills sucked, but it was fun. This is like the Fitzpatrick era, and I remember asking a bartender, because I went there when it wasn't during a game, and I said, "How much beer are you guys going through? How much Labatt's are you going through during game time?" And they said, "Yeah, our district manager ran the numbers. We're averaging a keg every 15 minutes during the game."
Damn.
Wow.
Think about that for a second. Damn.
I mean, I will say anecdotally, the Anchor Bar in Kennesaw, when it first opened, it had no clue how much Labatt.
Oh, I'm sure.
Bills fans drink. So they actually ran out of it. Since then, obviously, they've gotten that corrected. But I've talked to the Labatt rep in this area, and he's like, yeah, anytime the Bills are hot and when they're playing, we go through a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing, I'm sorry, go ahead, Alex.
No. So I was just going to say it is so much fun. Of course, other franchises have their backer bars too, and I'm sure they're fun. But I think it is a little bit different because by and large, and I do think we're entering a new era. I do think we're entering a new era where Josh Allen is becoming an icon himself, and there are becoming people who are Josh Allen fans. But generally speaking, because the Bills have not historically been successful, because we haven't won tons of Super Bowls, because we aren't in a sexy city like Miami or Dallas or Houston, we don't get a ton of tag-along fans, right? Most people who are Bills fans have some sort of connection. They're either from Western New York themselves, or they know somebody, their dad or their mom or somebody has those direct ties. I think that's slowly changing, but historically that was always true. So when you go to these backer bars, it's amazing how many people I've met who, you're from Jamestown? Oh, you're from Salamanca? Oh, you're from Cheektowaga? Oh, do you know this family, oh yeah, we went to high school at South Park High. And it's like, whoa, the connection is bizarre, right? And that just creates such a fun energy. And it's like, cool, you know somebody that I know. You want to do a shot together? You know, and before you know it, you walk out of that bar and you're feeling pretty light. I'll tell you one quick story about a bar in Chicago, Terry, about one of the Bills backer bars in Chicago, because you asked about Atlanta. So there's one that is it's a little bit of if you walked in, you'd think it's like a biker bar. I mean, it's a little rough. It's a little rough around the edges.
Okay.
And I don't think I took you here, Ron. I don't think I took you to this one. It's called Delilah's. And I walked in when I first moved to Chicago. I heard it was a Bills bar, right? So I'm like, I'm going to go check it out. It's not even during a game. I'm just going to go check it out. It's like a Wednesday night, and I had a Bills hat on. And I walk in, and I'm standing at the bar, and I get a massive shove. I mean, like a shove that pushed me, and I'm a big guy. And I turn around, and I've never been in a fight in my life, for the record, other than like with my siblings. And I'm like, what is going on here? And this guy goes, hey, what's going on? I'm the owner. Let's do shots. Delilah's is a standing room only bar during the game.
Wow.
And they have a rule, and I might be a little off about the number, but if you want to have a shot, you have to buy everyone in the bar a shot. It's $2. It's $2 a shot per person. So 50 people in the room, you spend $100. Everyone gets a shot, and then you get to have a speech during one of the commercial breaks.
Oh wow!
During the game,
that's cool.
You get that. They get so you pay the $100. You get everyone in the bar a drink, and you get to say, "Hey, we're gonna win this game." Blah 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 blah. Anyway, I've been told by everyone who goes, if do not go to a game at Delilah's for a Bills bar or during a Bills game, if you work the next day, you will leave blacked out.
Wow.
You will not leave having any idea what is going on. You probably won't remember the second half of the game.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's Delilah's. I would go to the other one that's a little bit more low key.
I can't top that, man. Wow. You know, that's wow. That's something. The only thing I can equate to the Falcons or Atlanta culturally in regards to food wouldn't even be beer. It'd be lemon pepper wings. That when I think of the Falcons and I think of Atlanta,
lemon pepper wings are fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, they are outstanding.
Like,
but I go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Like, as somebody, obviously from Buffalo area, like, I love buffalo wings, don't get me wrong. I was a little bit, like, skeptical the first time. I was like, oh, lemon pepper wings? And then, like, I was like, you know what? People keep saying it's awesome. I had to try it. Wow, it is fantastic.
It's great.
And it's funny because I had a brother-in-law. He's from, northeastern Pennsylvania. He came down, and he's just raved about it. Ever since then, he's like, lemon pepper wings, it's where it's at. You got to try it. And I'm not saying it's 2.0 for buffalo wings, because don't get me wrong, I'm a little biased, but
it's just different.
It's a very, very good way of doing wings.
They're delicious. They are delicious. So, guys, I got two questions left for you. One of them, I don't know that you're going to have a similar experience, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up and at least discuss it with you. So, if you are an Atlanta Falcon fan, there are realities that you have to deal with. One of the realities is the Matt Ryan, Michael Vick paradox. And what I mean is, there are some in the culture of Falcons who love Michael Vick so much and essentially were so disappointed by his career ending with the Falcons that they hated the next guy that was good that took his place, which was Matt Ryan. Right?
So by default, it didn't matter who it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It could have been Tom Brady. You're going to hate him. because he's not Michael Vick.
Right,
Yeah.
Right. So there is this fracture in the Falcons culture where you have some folks who love Matt Ryan. They don't necessarily hate Michael Vick, but Matt Ryan is their guy. And then you have some folks that love Michael Vick, and these are the folks that usually hate Matt Ryan, that use words like when you say, well, he has the 8th most passing yards. They're like, well, stats don't matter. You know what I mean? It's just it's ridiculous. But my question to you is there anything like this in Bills land, in Bills culture? Is there any heated debate or comparison of two players where your culture is literally split down the middle, with some Bills liking this guy and hating this guy, and the other Bills like this guy and hate the other guy? Is there anything you can think of like that?
The only thing I can think of, and I brought him up earlier, is O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
I think there are some people who will go to the stadium and tailgate and have an O.J. Simpson jersey. They'll wear the O.J. Simpson jersey and they're proud.
Right.
And then there are people who are like, yeah, but the guy's a murderer.
Right.
You know, and I think it does create a little bit of a split within the fandom. I remember so obviously OJ died in the last year.
Right.
I remember when the Bills broke the playoff curse. So we went 17 consecutive years without a playoff appearance. When we finally made the playoffs, the Buffalo Bills subreddit, right, on Reddit, everyone was posting pictures at different Bills backer bars, all the crazy things. And one was of O.J. Simpson signing autographs at the Las Vegas Buffalo Bills backer bar.
Right.
And I think half the fans were like, whoa, what a legend, blah, blah, blah. And half were like, why was that murderer allowed in during the Buffalo Bills backer bar in Las Vegas? I think he's a very, understandably, a very polarizing figure.
Yeah.
I mean, were it not for him, we wouldn't have the Kardashians.
That's true. That's true.
And there's actually several people in the fandom too. They believe that there was an OJ curse. So that we were not going to win a Super Bowl with OJ while he was alive. We'll see. I don't know. But that just, I think, speaks to the divisiveness of him. But I mean, there's a reason why he's the juice. You know.
You know what? I think Dave Chappelle said it best when he's talking about it's in the 90s and it's right after the whole debacle went down with the murder, and he's in this restaurant with his agents, a bunch of agents, and OJ walks through and OJ says, hey, OJ, and OJ says, hey, young man. And his agent looked at him and said, how could you speak to that murderer? And he goes, that murderer has over 11,000 yards. I mean, you know what I mean? He can't. It was the levity of it was just, it's not funny, but it's kind of funny. But whatever.
Yeah.
I get it. This Matt Ryan Michael Vick paradox has started fights.
I can see that.
A lot of fights. Yeah, and you would think it's
so
silly.
I want to make sure. So as a non-Falcons fan, I just want to make sure I understand. So is the fight people who are pro Matt Ryan saying that Matt Ryan is better or was better than Michael Vick? Or like what is the real heat?
Okay.
Are people comparing these two
They do.
These two players' careers?
They do. And a lot of them blame Matt Ryan for everything. So they blame Matt Ryan for the Super Bowl. They blame Matt. And by the way, Matt Ryan had the 3rd highest quarterback rating in any Super Bowl. So it wasn't Matt's fault, right? Now, if you want to blame him for not calling an audible when we're on the 20, okay. But you can't really blame that performance on. But they blame Matt for everything. They blame Matt for every playoff loss. They blame him for everything. And it's simply because he wasn't Michael Vick. Now, go ahead.
And I think part of the challenge there with Michael Vick was just like the circumstances on how he left, right?
Right.
Like I think there was legitimately some people who were like, you know what? People make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't right. And I think there is a certain level of, well, maybe, you should forgive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was kind of one of the challenges that he even had later on when he moved. It was like, well, yeah, but he's Michael Vick, and it was like, well, I don't know. I mean, I think that there is some level of like, I don't even think what he did as far as like what he tried to do to even boost his image, to be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do these things to support these different organizations. I think he was legitimately, I don't think that it was, I mean, obviously I wasn't there. I didn't see exactly what had happened, but, I think it was just, it's a very polarizing thing where I think there is a certain level of, we hold QBs to a very high standard. And
Mm-hmm.
I get it from the NFL. Like, you've got a franchise quarterback. You don't want anybody to say, yeah, we condone or support, dogfighting, right?
Right.
I get it. But I think that that's probably part of it. Like, there's probably a lot of just what ifs. What if he had continued?
Yeah.
And so I think that,
Well, and I remember they went to that NFC Championship game and lost to the Eagles. I mean, they were developing and building something really special down in Atlanta. So
oh
it's
yeah,
interesting because I didn't know about this feud.
Mm-hmm.
I guess from my perspective, as a non-Falcons fan, Terry, I would say I understand the frustration about you built this team around Michael Vick and his specialties. Left-handed quarterback, incredible runner,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost like you had to go through an entire rebuild. I can see the frustration and the anger as a fan,
Mm-hmm.
but it's interesting. I feel like it's misguided if you're
Very
blaming
much
Matt
so.
Ryan for that.
Very much
yeah.
so. Very much.
But the anger and frustration is valid. It's just I
Well,
think it's being misguided.
here's the thing, right? Um, Michael Vick did what Michael Vick did, and look,
Yeah.
I to kind of give context, okay. And once I'm done, I'll tell you where I stand on this. But to give it context, Michael Vick was one of the first superstars, I would say, subsequent to Dion, that everybody in Atlanta just rallied around, right? Lest we not forget, Michael Vick came in 2001 where there were black quarterbacks, but the thought process, not amongst everyone, but amongst the more traditional coaches, was that black players can't think fast enough to process the information and they can't play quarterback. And Michael Vick was this enigmatic figure. He could do things that nobody else could do. He could throw the ball 100 yards. He was basically Superman. He could leap buildings in a single bound. He ran through two Minnesota Vikings who hit each other because he was running that fast. He was magic.
It was fun. He
right.
was fun.
He was incredible, right?
Watching him, I mean, I was not a Falcons fan, but if he was on the TV, I'm watching.
He was must-see TV, right?
Yeah.
And so, as an African American, most folks were proud because they're looking at this like, okay, this guy is going to take us. This guy's going to get it done. This guy's going to win a Super Bowl, and the world is going to see, right, that black quarterbacks are just as good as anybody else. And now, to be fair, Michael Vick didn't study the playbook. He said that. He's admitted that. Okay. But the bottom line is, this guy had the hopes of a city.
Yep.
And
it sounds like a community.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And then this happens, and they're let down, and they're upset. And then you bring along Matt Ryan, who is the polar opposite of Michael Vick.
Yeah.
The total opposite.
I mean,
at the end of
he looks, and I have no disrespect against the guy, but he looks like he's got a punchable face. He's just like your stereotypical white, tall dude.
Right.
I can understand. I mean, physically,
right.
It's a polarizing difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, but he comes along. He is the first Atlanta Falcon to give us 2 consecutive winning seasons. At the time he did it, we were 40 plus years in existence, and there had never been 2 consecutive winning seasons. Think about that for a second, right? Matt Ryan is 8th all time in history in passing yards. Matt Ryan has broken every record as an Atlanta Falcon. And if I'm being honest,
NFL MVP.
Yes. Matt Ryan is the best quarterback that we've ever had. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Michael Vick. Okay? I'm a Falcons fan. I care about the name on the front. I love both of them. I do not distinguish. In other words, the two are not mutually exclusive. Just because I love Matt doesn't mean I don't love Mike, right?
Yep.
Or Michael. But there are a lot of Falcon fans who, for whatever reason, are caught up in this battle. And so Atlanta is a very unique place because most of the people here are not from here. It's a very transient community, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have loyal Falcon fans who've been here all of their lives, but because of the disappointment, you know, they fall in various spectrums. You have folks that love Michael Vick and hate Matt Ryan. You have folks that love Matt Ryan and hate Michael Vick, or they don't necessarily hate Michael Vick. They just love Matt Ryan, right? And then you have the folks like me who love them both. But I just think it's interesting, and I wonder if other franchises go through it because, quite candidly, when Matt Ryan got voted into the Atlanta Falcons Hall of Fame, there were a few folks booing. As ridiculous as that sounds, right? There were folks booing. But anyway, I thought it was interesting. So, last question.
I think that's fascinating. And I don't think we have anything that's direct like that. I do think there are people we universally hate. And I think the one that you might find interesting, because most people don't know it if you're not from Western New York, people from Buffalo Bills fans, we hate Bon Jovi. We hate Bon Jovi.
Really?
Yep.
Why
we hate Bon Jovi. There are bars that outside the bar, they'll say this is a Bon Jovi free bar.
What?
The story is when Ralph Wilson died, the original owner of the Bills.
Okay.
He put it up. He put the sale of the Bills up for just a general sale.
Okay.
Highest bidder wins, gets the team.
Okay.
And the story is that Bon Jovi. Well, we know this. We know Bon Jovi partnered with a bunch of Canadian investors because yes, very wealthy guy, but not NFL owner wealthy.
Right.
He had a bunch of private silent investors who all were Toronto money who wanted to buy the Bills. Supposedly, the rumor has always been, had he bought the Bills, he would have moved them to Toronto.
Oh.
And of course, we'll never know if that's true. But if you Google Buffalo Bills Bon Jovi, you'll see tons of articles. Bills fans freaking hate Bon Jovi. I think over the years, it's gotten a little better, but there was a period of time where it was like Bon Jovi is not welcome in the city of Buffalo,
right?
Because he was going to take our team from us,
right? So that's wow. I did not know that, and I will definitely do my research on that. So wow, okay, I learned something new today.
So I thought you might find that to be fun, a little fun.
I mean, well, number one, thank God it didn't happen, right? Because I mean, you know, we have Canadian football. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Okay. Anyway, I don't want to see Buffalo move to Toronto. So whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's certain teams that should stay, like Green Bay, Buffalo. Yes. They should stay in those towns forever. Like it would be sacrilegious to move them. So last item I want to cover, and thank you guys for being with me. We've been together for 2 hours. In our initial show, it has been fun. And in our initial show, we talked about doinks on a kick, right? We had a 20-minute conversation on doinks and the rules that needed to be added.
What did we call the episode? We called the episode Double Doinks and something.
Doinks or something else, something like that.
Yeah.
But I found it interesting that in the Tampa Bay game, and Tampa Bay is our division rival, so I'm glad they lost. Let's put that out there. I'm glad they lost.
Yep.
Good for them.
Yep.
But they lost on a doink field goal. And as soon as I saw that, Alex, I thought about you. You were the first person I thought about. Like, oh my God, it happened. Because remember when we were talking, I was like, man, it rarely happens that you have a doink field goal to go in, right? And you were like, there was one where there were 4 doinks and it went in college. And I think you sent it to me, or Ron sent it to me.
It was in college. It was like a quadruple doink. It was absurd. It was absurd.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm watching this game against Tampa Bay, and man, when that doink happened, I must have laughed for like 10 minutes, and I was like, damn, Alex, you called it. So I just thought it was funny, man. I had to tell you thank you, because let me tell you something. I am that petty, right? When that happened, all of the Bucks fans I know, I sent them this meme of the Falcons, the Panthers, and the Saints on the bench, with the Falcons going, "Hey, come on over. It's all right. Have a seat. Have a seat. We can watch the playoffs together. Come on over, right?" So the reason I bring it up is you had a very, very interesting proposal. And that was, if you kick a field goal and there's a doink, what do we say? I think you wanted it to be 5 points.
So let me, I'll go back to because I've reevaluated.
Okay.
I've reevaluated. So let me give the background, right?
All right.
So anyone who's watched a football game, the odds of hitting the uprights is astronomically small. If you ask an NFL athlete,
right,
anyone, the best kicker, Justin Tucker in his prime, 50 yards away, hit the upright. I don't think he'd be able to do it.
Right.
Has he hit the upright? Of course he has.
Right.
But I don't think you could intentionally try to do it.
Right.
And I think the NFL game, as much as it's a beautiful, wonderful game that we all love, I do think a lot of the rules are antiquated to a game that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, the original game, we're talking about the safety that's equal to 2 points. This is back when the forward pass wasn't even a thing. Right? The game has changed, and I do think there should be some modification of the rules that make it more fun. And so one of the things that I said when we had you on our show, is I said I think a doink should count as 1 point, regardless of whether it goes in or not. Mm-hmm. Now, 1 point per doink. So I mentioned earlier, the 13 seconds, kind of makes me feel like, ooh, right? Or when you say wide right, ooh, right? I live in the Chicago area. You know what is that equivalent for Chicago Bears fans? The double doink. You say the double doink, and people in Chicago shiver. Ooh, And I think a double doink, this is what I said to you on the show. Right. A double doink should be 2 points, whether it goes in or not. If it does go in, it's 2 points plus the 3 points, right? Okay. So that becomes 5 points. Now, if it's a double doink and it doesn't go in, you still get the 2 points. A single doink that goes out, 1 point. That was my theory originally. And you two both disagreed with that premise, and that's fair. That's fair. I've reflected.
You reevaluated it, right?
I've reevaluated, and I think I have a new one. Let's
hear it.
The doink is 5 points, regardless if it goes in or not.
Okay.
Doesn't matter if it goes in. Doesn't matter if it doesn't go in. It doesn't matter. If double doinks, doesn't matter. A doink is a doink. It's a doink. It's 5 points. It's more than the field goal, less than a touchdown. And I think teams could start thinking about it and saying, hey, listen, it's 4th and 2, and we're 4th and goal. And I don't think we can punch this in. They have a stout defense.
Go for the doink.
We keep trying. I want to get more than the 3 points, but I don't think we can get the 7. What if we try to have our kicker try to doink it, and you say, we try to doink it on the inside, right? And you have to be looking at me to see this. Try to doink it on the inside, so best case it's 5 points, worst case it's 3 points. And I think you'd start seeing people trying to do that, and I think that would be fun. So that is my modified, updated Thoughts? What? Both of you. I want to know your thoughts.
So my question would be, all right, as far as like this is the upright, right? What if you hit like the bottom? Does that
Crossbar?
count? Yeah, if you hit the crossbar, does that count?
That's part of it. Yeah.
Okay, so what about like the section that holds up the crossbar?
No, that doesn't count.
Okay,
That's
so it's only eligible, right? Crossbar and above, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I like that. I mean, I can see like I feel like some of the rules with the NFL, like I feel like the punt return, I feel like some of those rules I don't quite like, to be honest with you. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like
I think
that
there are definitely rules. I think the safety should be worth more than 2 points, for example. I
Yeah.
think there are certain things that need to be reviewed at some point.
But I could see like that would be kind of fun because it would. I mean, it's a tough shot, but like I know like our dad has talked about it a lot of times before. It's like you think about the odds, the statistics of like a doink. Like it is a hard thing, but how many times does it happen? And then imagine if you actually have kickers trying to get them, right? Like,
well, and what would be fun is, okay, what if you have a guaranteed 3-pointer, right? I mean, it's an easy chip shot, and now you're trying to go for the 5-pointer. Yep. And what if you miss it? Oh my God. Like, oh my God, you got greedy there. You should have just taken a 3 easy points, right? Like it could be a totally extra fun element of the game.
The other thing I'm thinking of is like, you know how like for most teams they have like their third down kind of like horn or whatever. Like in the Bills' case, it's the train horn. You could do something really fun with a doink, right? Like just doink, and like the whole stadium shakes. I would love that. That would be fun.
All right, so Terry, you were really against. I mean, we'd have to rewind the tape, but you didn't like how it could multiply with my original proposition, which was like 1. If it's a double doink, it's 2, and then it goes in. That's 5. I think you thought that was way too complicated. What do you think of this modified approach?
I'm good with it. I think it would be great. I think, and look at the press conference, because if you got a 3 in hand, if you're down by 3 and you got a 3 in hand and you go for that and miss, oh my God, that press, they are going to be all over you. Holding, but they're going to be all over you.
But if you get it.
I mean, if you get, it adds an extra element of mystery to the game. It adds an extra element of specialization to kicking, because if I agree with you, if you're trying to do that, good luck with that. I don't know anybody who could do that.
But I'll say this. I know you were happy the Bucs lost, but in my rules,
they would have won.
They would have won that game. They would have won 25-20.
They would have. Well,
wait. Yeah.
They would have won, but thank God they didn't. Well, no.
No, you're right. It doinked. I forgot. It doinked and went in. Yeah. So it would have been. So they still would have lost, but it would have been 25-20 as opposed to 23-20. I forgot that it doinked and went in.
And went in. That was the funniest thing when I saw it, because I was like, I'm doing something else, and I see this. Bam! And I'm like, oh, no. Well, and then it goes in, and I'm like, yes.
It is funny because sometimes when, like, if it's a Monday night or a Thursday night game and I'm not really paying that much attention, just on in the background or on my phone or whatever, and sometimes the microphones really pick up the whoa, sometimes it picks it up real good. You go, what just happened?
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, no, that was 5 points. I mean, to your point, it adds an extra element of scoring. If you're down by 4, as opposed to 3, guess what? And you can't score the touchdown, you can try the doink. And if you get it, I mean, I'm fine with it. Like, it's not ridiculous. The degree of difficulty is more than a field goal. So I'm with it, man. I'm good with it either way. I like it. I like the suggestion. You don't have to think if this. It's a straight 5. I'm good with it.
Yeah, and I think that's where I kind of had to reflect on it, because where do you draw the line? A quadruple doink and then it goes in. Is that 7? I mean, is that 4 plus 3? I mean, I recognized since we last spoke that does get a little complicated. What if, and I remember somebody even said to me, they go, Alex, what if in a freak world the ball lands and somehow lays perfectly on the upright?
That's gotta be like.
I don't think I'm not sure it's
Gotta be
possible.
one in a billion. That the chance of that are probably 1 in a trillion, right?
Like
I'm
the
not sure
dimensions on the ball, like to even do that. Like, I mean,
I
you're
don't-
talking like it's not going to balance right.
right. Yeah,
I don't
I don't
know.
think that'll happen. I
But
don't.
you know,
I don't
you
think that'll
start
happen.
thinking about the craziness, and that's
Oh
where you
yeah.
say,
Oh yeah.
you know what, a doink is a doink is a doink.
Right.
So I think that's where my head is at. The one thing that I will say that I still think the NFL is fumbling and they can't figure it out is defining what a catch is. I feel like every freaking week, I feel like they're like bringing in the analysts. They're like, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that's a catch? I don't know. Do you think that's a catch? And I remember seeing this recently. I don't remember the exact situation, but there was an NFL player who caught the ball and he got his left foot in twice in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't remember the situation exactly, but his left foot went down.
And then
his left foot went up. The right foot did not go out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't touch the ground.
Right.
And then his left foot went down again, and they said incomplete catch. Incomplete because he didn't get both feet down. And then I said to myself, wait, so now you're saying a one-legged man could never catch a ball in the NFL?
I guess not by their rules. No, I guess not by their rules. No, which is weird, but no.
So weird side question. Going back to like the whole idea with doinks, let's say it is 5 points. Would you have a dedicated precision kicker on most teams' rosters?
I don't even know that. I don't even know that there are guys that could do this, man. I'm sure
Are
there
you
are.
Suggesting a doink specialist?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't.
Like
we call them DKs.
Your red zone doink specialist. When you're like, we can't do this, send out the doink specialist.
No, so years ago, Ron, they used to have there were a lot of kickoffs where the kickers couldn't kick all the way to the end zone, right? You might be a really good field goal kicker, but you weren't a good kicker. Yes, so they had dedicated kickoff kickers.
Right.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying. I don't know if most teams. I think to Terry's point, I'm not sure the talent is even available. Yeah. But number two, are you really going to fill up one of your 53 men for the doink specialist? I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thought.
5 points. Like, let's say, if your red zone conversion rate's pretty low, and this is when we need it. I don't know.
I'll say this: if there was a guy who could reliably and accurately hit the uprights and get the 5 points in this scenario, I think that would be the NFL MVP of that season.
Yeah.
Right? Move over Josh Allen, move over Lamar Jackson. This kicker is guaranteeing us 5 points every time.
He'd have to kick 15 doinks in a row. Like he'd have to do something phenomenal, right?
I mean, the statistics there, like if you do the math, like you figure what the dollar point per point is, right? Like, yeah, field goals and even just getting the extra point, right? Like there is a huge amount of money riding on it. 5 points is no slouch, right?
Yeah, he'd have to kick 15 in a row, and Taylor Swift would have to be his girlfriend. Like that's the only way he's gonna be an MVP. It's just, let's be real, he's still a kicker. That's, you know what I mean. Like you'd have to be really special. You know what I mean? He probably would have to speak 5 languages as well. Like there would have to be way more to him than just that. I'm just saying it's the kicker. That's real. But guys, I have truly enjoyed this conversation. I've enjoyed getting together with you guys. It was fun. It was like we're talking in the living room and we're just talking about our teams. And I can't do anything but thank you for a couple of reasons. Number one, you did not have to agree to come on this podcast at night. I thank you for doing it. And I thank you for giving me a chance a year and a half ago, however long it was, to even take a chance to do a podcast with me. I thank you for that. It encouraged me to get into this business. And I will forever be grateful. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. The last thing I'm going to say is, hey, man, tell everyone in America, or at least the folks who watch this recording, the 164 people who subscribe to my channel, and maybe a few more, tell them where they can find your podcast.
All right. So you can find us we're on Apple, we're on Amazon, we're on YouTube. And if you just look up Between Two Studs, you'll find us. We're also on Spotify too. And then if you're looking for us, we're on Instagram too. So be sure to check us out. And Terry, honestly, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having us on your show. We had a lot of fun. So for anybody who's listening that did not check our show out when Terry comes on, that's well worth a listen. That was a fun show. So I'm happy we kind of got to do the part 2 of it. So this was a lot of fun, and thank you.
Terry, it was an absolute delight. And, at the end of the day, the podcast thing, the more you realize, the more you do it, the more it's fun. You get to meet exciting, fun people. You get to talk to them. And there's some technical challenges along the way, but overall it's accessible. And that's what's wonderful. Everyone can do this. And so to me, if we helped get anyone else to start, producing and getting their voice out there, that's a wonderful thing. So it's an honor for us to be a part of your journey as you do this series. And do me a favor. I want one request from you. Okay. If the Bills win the Super Bowl, have us back on. Can you commit to that?
I will not only commit to that, I'm going to commit to 2 things. Number one, my beloved Falcons that I love so much are not in it, right? So I'm going to throw my support to you guys. I'm going to root for
you. I'm
going to watch you guys. And you guys do me one favor. If you win the Super Bowl, and I know you're going to be partying, just give me a call so we can share that moment.
I would love that.
It doesn't have to be that long, but just give me a call, man, because what it'll do for me is if I see you guys win, then I'll say to myself, okay, one day that'll be my Falcons. Because guess what? You guys deserve it. With everything that you've been through, damn it, you deserve it. And I'm rooting for you guys. Again, my Falcons are not in it. Falcons fans, we're not in it. So I'm rooting for you guys. And go in there, kick Lamar's ass, kick Patrick's ass, and then kick Bill Campbell's ass, and bring this thing back, man. And just give me a call, man, because I really want to experience what that joy is going to be like, man. That's all I got. But yeah, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it. To everyone who tuned in for the recording, thank you so much. Rise up. I don't know what you guys say as to each other as Bills fans. Our call sign is rise up. Oh, go Bills. Okay, rise up and go Bills, and good luck. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. Good night.
Rise up and go Bills.
Rise up and go Bills.